In 2022, the world witnessed a heart-stopping event. Bills safety Damar Hamlin got struck in the chest by T. Higgins during a regular season game. Damar would go into cardiac arrest, needing CPR for over 9 minutes. He wouldn't wake up during that time, and the world pondered, did we just witness someone die on national television? If he does survive, will his life ever be the same? And some of us had an even more important question to ask. How will this affect my fantasy football team? Damar Hamlin's injury ended up getting the game canceled. And I will be honest, when it got canceled, I wondered, what's going to happen to my team? I was behind, and I had Josh Allen, Joe Mixon, Devin Singletary, and Tyler Bass to go. Now I know I sound like a monster. Some of you are wondering, how could you think about fantasy football when someone's life is on the line? And I understand, but in my defense, this was the championships. It was down to me and James for all the marbles. I've only made the championship twice in 15 years. So this was a huge deal. Selfishly thinking about how my fantasy team is doing while some guy is trying his best to breathe on the field, it was a real train of thought that I had. And it made me look into myself. Is it bad that I play this game that makes me this numb to serious real-life events, where I'm more concerned about my virtual victory than the well-being of a human person? Am I soulless? Am I disconnected? I don't know. I might be. I do think that by nature, fantasy football dehumanizes athletes to you, because you're selecting real-life people onto your fake little team, and how they perform in real life affects how you perform in this little game. And so that's very exciting when they go off and score many touchdowns and many points for your team. It's awesome. But that also means when real life things happen, like real things happen to them, it can hurt you if you have them on your team. And then it makes you have these really complicated emotions. I'll give you an example. In 2014, there is a player named Ray Rice on the Baltimore Ravens.
They had enough of star running back Ray Rice. They fired him, and the National Football League immediately suspended him indefinitely. The actions came after new video surfaced showing Rice striking his then-fiancée and apparently knocking her unconscious.
In the middle of the season, surveillance footage came out of him beating his wife in an elevator. That alone is enough to dislike the guy. But he also got suspended for the rest of the season. And if you drafted him, you had a second reason to hate the guy. That you wasted a 6th-round pick. That's one of the weird, complicated emotions that you can get. Someone's terrible, off-the-field, extracurricular activities, let's say, made you lose this game that you really care about. So in that season, if you drafted Ray Rice, you can draw a direct line from when he hit his wife to you suffering in the fantasy football season. So that makes you feel weird feelings. Are you more upset that this athlete you don't know committed domestic violence, which is bad, but you don't know them? Or are you more upset that him doing that made you lose? And losing sucks. I would have loved to have been the judge for that court case. I would have said, when you hit her, you not only altered the course of your life, but also my fantasy football league. Then there's people that have done bad things and are still playing. And fantasy football makes you look past those bad things sometimes. And that's kind of odd. In 2021, Deshaun Watson settled a bunch of lawsuits.
The NFL is investigating sexual misconduct allegations made against Houston Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson.
From a bunch of women alleging that during massages, he would ask them for a little extra, if you know what I mean. He would more or less pressure women into going downstairs and yanking his ding-dong. He was suspended and then came back a couple of years later. If you play fantasy football, that's when some interesting thoughts came in. Because before he was suspended, he was a really great quarterback.
For a quarterback every year, hasn't he?
2nd and 6. Watson throwing deep downfield, and it is caught. Will Fuller.
He had an amazing season with the Texans before going down with an ACL injury. He had the potential of being a really good quarterback. And in my league, not that many people were excited to pick him up. I don't know if it had to do with the whole thing that he did, but I think people were more afraid of his ACL injury affecting him than the morality of drafting someone who people felt was assaulting people. In my league, someone did pick him up, and it didn't work out for him. I'll say it. I really wanted Deshaun Watson that year, even after hearing everything. But someone beat me to the waivers, and they had a chance with him. It didn't work out, but if he went off, I would have offered a trade. I wanted him. I loved his rookie year in the Texans. You've heard of people saying separate art from the artist. That same debate kind of exists in football. You separate the football from the wife beater. Hey, for me, if you play good football, you're welcome on my team. I don't care about none of that other stuff when it comes to... I mean, you see already, this is crazy. I'm saying all this stuff and it just... It sounds crazy to say out loud. But that is what the game does. When you're playing fantasy football, you're not trying to draft the 12 or 15 most upstanding citizens in the league. You're not looking for the best fathers. You're not looking for guys who gave the most to charity. You're looking for who can score touchdowns, who can make catches, who can get yards. A lot of times, the people that do that, completely deplorable, just bottom of the earth people that I'm so happy to have on my team if I can get them. I decided to look at Aaron Hernandez's stats before he did all the little shenanigans that he did.
Intriguing new evidence in the murder trial of former New England Patriot Aaron Hernandez. How do shell casings and bubble gum allegedly link the former NFL star to the execution-style killing of his friend?
It's safe to say that he wasn't really high on anyone's draft board, so, you know, that whole thing was tragic, but fantasy football-wise was pretty irrelevant. Just a sidebar. Speaking of getting hit and going into cardiac arrest for 9 minutes, I want to hit you with laughs for 40 minutes to an hour. I am a stand-up comedian, and I perform all over the country. I will put all the dates up here to the left and right of me, and I will have links to those shows where you can buy tickets and come check me out. If you live in a city that's not listed, please go to my Beacons link where you can tell me where you live, give me your email, and I will hit you up when I'm there. I promise not to spam you. I'm just trying to make money off of you. That's it. I also have my comedy special that I just put out in March. I will put the link to that in the bio as well. And like, comment, subscribe, do all those things because I want this to be everything. So help a brother out, you know? Damar Hamlin's situation was very unique. It happened during championship weekend for many leagues in America. And a lot of people had to address what they were going to do in that league. But there was this awkward wait time of when do we start talking about it. I was ready to talk about it immediately, but we all established that I have no heart or soul, so that's that. But for a lot of people, it was within the next day, maybe a couple of days, Reddit threads talking about what the best way was to move forward and how to deal with this. I saw Reddit comments about how we're asking these questions too quickly, how could you, da-da-da. And I think all that is nonsense. No one knew who the guy was before it happened, It's sad that it happened, but no one was actually sad. It was just sad as a fact, which is a difference. Something sad as a fact, you go, okay, that's sad, I wish it didn't happen, but my life isn't changed at all. Many of us didn't need to grieve about the situation. Some of us really wanted to pretend that it was incredibly powerful and sad, and I think that's because we think that that's what you're supposed to do. Oh, look at that. Oh, I better be a normal human person in society that's emotionally affected heavily by this thing. But that's all pretend. I just didn't pretend. I just was like, okay, that's unfortunate. What's going to happen with my game? I need this. I need Josh Allen to score 5 touchdowns. Maybe there's some philosophical thing to ask. How soon after someone has a life-altering injury are you able to talk about football again? Are you able to go back to normal? So, for me, it's 5 seconds. And for some, it maybe takes a couple more days to act like it's really something else for them. You know, whatever you gotta do. In a way, I was forced to be the bad guy. I was forced to ask about it. The commissioners were forced to be the bad guys. And people involved in those championship games were forced to talk about that. Everyone else was like, I don't care. Of course you don't care. You're not in that game. You get to be a good person. Oh, what a tragedy. Terrible. The rest of us go, it's terrible. Okay, now what? I had to fall on that sword. I just want to clear up that I'm not saying it's not sad. It is sad. It was unfortunate, but it also is what it is. There's this distinction I'm making. Sad and far away is what that was. Fantasy football was close and important, and so I felt more about that. If you're curious about what we ended up doing in our league about this whole debacle, we ended up just keeping the scores the way they were from right before that happened, which effectively made me lose right away. And I agreed with this decision. Reason being, fantasy football is super random, like I said before. Injuries happen, and then you lose a player out of nowhere. Weather happens, and games don't even happen. And this is part of that nature of fantasy football. Someone collapsed on the field, it canceled the game. The points are what they are. This was a very easy decision, an easy stance for me to take, because realistically, I didn't have a shot of winning. I needed 4 players to go off, and he still had Stephon Diggs, and I'll show you the point total. This was before it happened. It was not happening. So I get to look like a courageous, generous person, when in all reality, it was over. We did add something to our league in case something like this happens in the future. It's called PPCR, points per cardiac arrest. If someone goes into cardiac arrest on your team, you get awarded 100 points just to make up for that imbalance. This is not true, obviously. That was just a dark joke. I'm sorry. So, overall, I don't think I'm necessarily a bad person for prioritizing fantasy football over a stranger's life.